Monday, April 14th, 2025, and a lot's going on in the world, and we'll be talking about that here on World Edition. European officials are condemning Russia's deadly Palm Sunday attack on Ukraine's Sumy. So Trump calls Russia's strike on Sumy a mistake, and civilian death toll in Ukraine climbs as Putin resists Trump's peace drive. So that is something that is being talked about in the news and all along those lines. And in Sudan, hundreds were killed in an attacks on famine-hit displacement camps. So Sudan clinic workers killed in the Zamzam camp. And death is everywhere. Sudan camp residents shelter from attacks. And that was a quote from the BBC. So Sudan's RSF claims control of major Darfur camp as civilians flee that area. And China's Xi courts Vietnam as trade war with the U.S. mounts. China and Vietnam have signed a deal as Xi visits Hanoi amid U.S. tariff tensions. So Xi eyes inroads in Asia, Europe amid Trump's tariffs, and the U.S.-China tension. So it looks like Xi is seeking to win over allies as Trump pauses some of the tariffs. And South Korea begins the criminal insurrection trial of ousted President Yoon. So rebellion trial opens for South Korea's ousted president. And all along those lines, South Korea's Yoon is denying leading a coup on the first day of the insurrection trial. So definitely that is something that people are talking about in the news as well. So like I said, that is going on. And we've also got Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa declared election winner as rivals demand recount. So definitely some people are seeing his reelection in the presidential vote as a test of his war on drugs. So he is a Trump ally who was reelected in an Ecuador torn apart by gangs. So it definitely looks like in Ecuador imposed a state of emergency before those razor close elections that were a couple of days ago and all along those lines. And in Ghana, witchcraft accusations putting hundreds at risk of physical attacks or even death. So it looks like, according to Amnesty International in Ghana, there have been some people branded for life. How witchcraft accusations led to human rights violations of hundreds of women in North Ghana. So definitely looks like hundreds have been accused of witchcraft and urgently need protection and reparation. So that is something coming out of the African continent. And British Steel race to keep furnaces on as China issues a trade warning. So definitely lots going on in the trade space. British Steel, according to the BBC, government is confident it can secure materials to keep the Scunthorpe plant furnaces burning. So definitely that in the Guardian it says don't politicize row over Scunthorpe steel plant, according to a Chinese foreign minister. So China is saying they're no longer welcome in the UK steel sector, according to one of their ministers. And Iran nuclear talks are expected to continue Saturday in Rome. Iran to consult with Russia on U.S. nuclear talks and all in that space. So lots going on in the nuclear space as well. And an animated map that shows 2 years of war in Sudan. And after 2 years of war, Sudan is no closer to peace. So Sudan faces the world's worst humanitarian crisis as the second anniversary of the war nears in that area. So definitely that is something going on as well. And even the president of Kenya for Africa, he's saying all-inclusive dialogue is needed. So there's a lot going on in the African continent as well. And North Korea is making what could be its largest, most advanced warship ever. So that's something coming out of the Asia theater and everything like that. So satellite images reveal North Korea building the largest, most advanced warship yet in that area. And Algeria is to expel 12 officials from the French embassy. So Algeria orders the exit of French officials amid a rocky relation between those countries. So definitely there's a lot of rocky relations throughout the world. And the IDF says it hit a Hamas command center embedded in Gaza City Hospital. So Israel intensifies land and air attack on Gaza amid the humanitarian crisis. So that's something that we're seeing out as well. And President Trump says CBS and 60 Minutes should pay a big price for going after him. So Trump is saying CBS should lose its license after the 60-minute segments on Ukraine. So he lashed out at CBS and 60 Minutes and urges the FCC chair to impose the maximum fines and punishment. So Trump and Paramount agree on a mediator in the 60 Minutes lawsuit, and that was from about a week ago or something like that. So it looks like he's going after some of the big media as well. And Hamas said it's willing to free a larger number of hostages under a potential deal. But there's also reports out of Reuters that there is no breakthrough in Gaza talks, and Egyptian and European, Egyptian and Palestinian sources are saying that and everything like that. So definitely, there's a lot going on in the world there as well. And in Gabon, which is, I believe, one of the African nations, a coup leader, Oligo Ngomi, wins a poll by a huge margin. So Gabon's leader, Ngomi, is elected president with 90.35% of the vote, according to an interior minister yesterday. So this is Gabon's first election after the collapse of the Bongo dynasty. So definitely that's going on there. And in Europe, as Hungary votes on a ban of LGBTQ plus pride, what does it mean for other basic rights is what some folks are asking. So Hungary is supposed to adopt a constitutional amendment to ban LGBTQ plus gatherings. So Orban lawmakers set to back the amendment, enabling the crackdown. So there's definitely crackdowns in that area as well. And central Myanmar was shaken by a new quake in one of the biggest aftershocks since the March 28th Templar, and that was on yesterday as well. And the death toll, and they were even talking about this on Que Pasa Mujer yesterday from the Dominican club roof collapse, has risen to 225 after 4 died overnight, and that was from a couple of days ago. So looks like there was a small city that lost big in the Dominican nightclub tragedy. So definitely a lot was going on in that space, as even a New Jersey woman celebrating her 24th birthday was identified as a victim in the Dominican Republic nightclub roof collapse. And convalescent Pope Francis opens Holy Week with an in-person greetings. So definitely Pope Francis makes an in-person appearance at St. Peter's Square to open Holy Week. So definitely that is something going on as well. And as many people know, he's been recovering from illness as well. So definitely that's something going on as well. And mountains of trash and cat-sized rats as garbage workers strike in UK's second largest city. So Army experts are called in over the Birmingham bin strike, and it looks like Angela Rayner's deal will not end the bin strike, according to the unions in that area. So definitely some people have been saying that it's dysfunction worthy of the House of Windsor, the real reason rubble is piling up in Birmingham. And Australian Prime Minister's party launches election campaign. So definitely some folks are even wondering, we talk about housing here, about the housing crisis in Australia as well. So voters and economists united against major parties' housing policy promises. So definitely it looks like Australian political leader launched his election campaign focused on first-time homeowners. So definitely this whole notion of home ownership is something that is worldwide and all along those lines. So getting ready to get into a little bit of U.S. news, and then I see I've got Steve Rao with me as well as Kim Calhoun. So I'm getting ready to bring Steve Rao in. But a Harrisburg man is to be charged for arson attack on the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro. So that is something folks are looking at. A man accused of setting fire to the Pennsylvania governor's residence has been arrested. So I know that he was one of the people that had been looked at as a potential vice president candidate for Kamala Harris. So definitely it looks like some things are going on in terms of folks taking shots at him as well. And a risk of failure looms large as the GOP starts drafting the big, beautiful bill. So federal benefits face possible cuts in House Republicans' budget resolution. So it looks like battle lines over Trump agenda have intensified and put GOP leaders in a jam. So that's something that we're seeing as well. A New York City helicopter company shuts operation after a deadly crash, according to the FAA. So the company involved in the deadly helicopter crash in New York last week is shutting down immediately. So New York helicopter tour operator behind a fatal crash, and now they have shut down. And Karina Groff and her family were killed in a New York plane crash. So former NCAA Woman of the Year died in a plane crash, and she was definitely a star in the soccer realm. So a former MIT soccer star from Weston and her family were among the 6 killed in a private plane crash in New York. And it looks like some people are saying that the world's coolest dictator is heading to the White House. So definitely a key ally in Trump's migrant crackdown is coming for a visit. And El Salvador's leadership looks like they're going to be coming in and visiting. So Trump is to host the Salvadorian president at the White House. So that is something that folks are be looking at as well. And Mike Rogers will run again for Senate in Michigan. So Republican launches his second straight bid to flip Democratic-held Senate seat in a key battleground state. So that's something going on as well. And Zelensky invites Trump to Ukraine. So Zelensky urges Trump to visit Ukraine ahead of deal with Russia. And he also took a stab at J.D. Vance for justifying Russia's war on Ukraine. So definitely, and the White House has also released the results of President Trump's annual physical exam. And the White House says that Trump's weight and frequent victories at golf games are evidence of good health. So definitely that's something going on as well. And the Trump administration says it is not required to help wrongly deported man return to the U.S. So the Trump administration insists it isn't required to work with El Salvador to bring back that gentleman that had been mistakenly deported. So that's something we're seeing as well. So lots going on in the world and right here in the United States as well, including a Wisconsin teen that allegedly killed his parents in an extremist plot to assassinate Trump, according to the FBI. So teenager accused of killing parents to obtain financial means to assassinate Donald Trump. And so that's something going on from Wisconsin. And the U.S. Coast Guard says 1 in dead and 4 rescued and 5 missing from a capsized boat off of the Florida coast. So that's something else going on. And for Barbara Lee, being the wokest candidate in the race might not be enough this time. So it looks like folks are looking at her candidacy as well. And we'll see how this all plays out in the political arena. And 2 U.S. students have been detained in Denmark after alleged altercation with an Uber driver in that particular area. So they were Miami University students, and they've been detained in Denmark after a Uber dispute. So that's something else that we're seeing as well. And like I said before, China is well positioned to weather Trump's trade wars, according to the Financial Times, and sky-high U.S.-China tariffs are a mutual trade embargo that will hurt both sides, according to The Guardian. So like I said, I've got Steve Rao with me. I've also got the president of the network, or one of them, Kim Calhoun, and also Dr. Sharif and Jacoby as well. So how you doing, Steve? How's the campaign going? How's life?
It's good. I got to leave in a few minutes. Things are going good. You hit on all the big issues. Hopefully, I'll be back on a more frequent basis when this thing's over next March. But I think things are good. Yeah, really, in North Carolina, we're seeing a lot of impact of the tariffs. A lot of Indian stores in Western Wake County that are saying that they're having to pay higher costs. Looks like the grace period might be ending. Trump's not backing down. So we're seeing an economic impact. Also, we're witnessing a lot of job loss in the area. A lot of job loss with Cisco, technology companies, RTI International. So this is really affecting the local economy. So we're seeing definitely a contraction, which is going to be interesting. I think, it's interesting that the El Salvador dictators come to the White House and Governor Stein. I think it was just found out that there's some federal aid in North Carolina that's not going to be coming in to deal with Western Carolina. So that's a bit of a shocker. And, we're just doing what we can on this end to make sure that we're, trying to keep things moving. But you hit a lot of things. And I haven't really been keeping up a lot in the Iran nuclear talks, but I hope to make progress. And I want to hear, it's great to see Kimberly and everybody wanted to be here for a few minutes before I head out. I'm going to try to come back for economics Monday, but I've got another call I got to take. But it's good to see you all. Thank you.
Same here, Steve.
No problem.
Any other news going on in the political world that you think might bring some positive turnarounds for us?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think the good news for Democrats, I think 2026 would be a good year for Democrats. I know that Congressman Nickel, who's been on this show before, is considering a U.S. Senate run. We don't know what Governor Roy Cooper, former governor, is going to do. I guess it's hard to find positive if you watch the news, but it is Passover right now for the Jewish community, so we want to wish them a happy Passover. We have Easter coming up next week on Sunday, so that's exciting. Good Friday on Friday, and I guess the positive news is that you always read stories of people doing great things for our local communities. So I saw a group called Wakabumi that's raising a lot of money here in the North Carolina to help with STEAM education. So it's always good to see people doing good things to help others. And I'm hoping that we can get out of the negative noise and remember that we're neighbors and friends, and that we can help each other rather than knock each other down every day. But it is what it is, and we're just going to have to keep plugging
What
ahead.
about Tillis? What's going on with him? I hear a lot of hoopla, but do you keep up with Tom Tillis any?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think he will be running again. I heard a rumor that he'll be primaried from the right. Let's see what happens. And I think that he's a tough guy to beat. I mean, it's hard to beat an incumbent U.S. senator. He was an IBM guy, PricewaterhouseCoopers, very sharp. Unfortunately, I think he's being pressured so much by the right that he's not really coming to the center on certain issues. And but that's what I'm hearing. And I think Wiley Nichols got a good shot, I think, to beat him. I think Cooper would have even a better shot. He does run, but he may not even be the nominee. I mean, based on what I'm hearing out there, I don't know who would run, but he will be primaried from the right. So that's all I'm hearing.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch if Roy Cooper goes and moves in that direction. He has served our state for many, many years. I personally liked him better as a state attorney general than I did as a governor, but he has served us for a very long time. Well, that's awesome that there's so much going on, and you're always staying in the the public sector and the communities. I see you posting everywhere.
Well, yeah, doing the commissioner posts, and then I'm going on State Lines on Thursday. I don't know what I'll be talking about, but I'll be back on PBS, so that'll be aired this Sunday and Friday night. So excited about that.
Are they surviving the storm? Because I've had a few friends lose their job at some of the PBS stations and other places. How are they?
I don't know. I haven't really heard. I did hear a rumor that they're moving their studios from RTP off of Alexander Drive, UNC Drive to downtown Raleigh. So we'll wait to see if that happens. But it's going to be interesting, and we'll see what happens. I'll be back at 11. I'm going to come back for a few minutes on Economics Monday, but I'll try to be on longer this week, maybe tomorrow or Wednesday. But yeah, it's great to see all of you, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation. I guess I'll end with was a really exciting. The one positive news, Kimberly, I think it's exciting and you've been an entrepreneur, is the great role of startups. And so we're seeing a lot of traction with startups, with Raleigh doing Startup Week, other really, really great startups. So really excited about that, and looking forward to seeing what we can see with companies starting, AI posing a lot of challenges in terms of how it's going to be used and things like that. But I think it's really exciting to see also startup investment in AI and AI strategy, and I think this is going to be a good thing. So looking forward to seeing all of it.
Yeah, sounds great, Steve, and everything. The question I had for everybody here on the panel, and Steve, if you're still around, you can answer it as well. But this yesterday was Palm Sunday, so it's the start of Holy Week, and I did mention the Pope and some of his remarks and everything. But apparently, President Trump issued a announcement defending Christian faith in our schools, military, workplaces, hospitals, and hall of governments. And he said, we will never waver in safeguarding the rights to religious liberty, upholding the dignity of life, and protecting God in our public square. So he wrote that in his Holy Week presidential message released by the White House. And he says, we focus on Christ's redeeming sacrifices. We look to his love, humility, and obedience, even in the most difficult and uncertain moments. This week, we pray for an outpouring of Holy Spirit upon our beloved nation. We pray that America will remain a beacon of faith, hope, and freedom for the entire world. And we pray to achieve a better a future that reflects the truth, beauty, and goodness of Christ's eternal kingdom in heaven. And I know he was making some parallels between his own life and that of Jesus as he was dealt with that assassination attempt. But I just wanted y'all take on how much of a role religion plays in our United States kind of like fabric.
Republican politics have not been kind to religion statistically. That among younger people, a healthy percentage have been driven away from religion, from seeing the hypocrisy of of older evangelicals aligned with MAGA, which has some very unchristian principles.
Just a couple of things. One, Trump didn't write that. Trump doesn't go to church. Trump doesn't care about church. So let's be honest about that from the start. Number two, Rick is right. However, you left out one key point. Republican politics have not been kind to other religions besides extreme Christianity. Hence the reason why The Handmaid's Tale at this moment is slowly becoming a documentary instead of an actual fiction. Because when you have J.D. Vance going to a religious organization trying to force women to have more children, you have the religious leaders that they put forth, which are trying to condemn any other religion besides Christianity. When you have other individuals within the actual administration trying to force prayer in schools, but they're only focusing on Christianity and not any other religion. So yes, religion plays a role because that's why the Republican Party courts the evangelical right more so than any other religion out there. So,
I have some statistics. So according to Pew, as recently as the early 1990s, about 90% of US adults identified as Christians. Currently, according to Google AI, it's down to 62%. That's a huge freaking decline.
Yeah, that is definitely a big decline, and apparently even to courting the religious right. And it looks like on Holy Thursday, the president is expected to host a staff worship service, but among the people will be Pastor Paula White, his senior advisor to the White House Faith Office, the Reverend Franklin Graham, who I believe is the son of Billy Graham, Pastor Greg Laurie, and Pastor Jennison Franklin. So they're going to be participating in prayer, scripture, service, and communion. And it does sound like a lot of those individuals are more on the extreme side of the evangelical movement and everything
So
like that.
I'm writing a novel set about 10, 15 years from now. And in that novel, in the background, there's a showdown between people who worship old Jesus, the nice guy holding the lamb, long hair, and people who worship what comes to be called real Jesus. Real Jesus has a buzz cut. Real Jesus will punch you in the face, and so you've got it's a conflict between hardcore MAGA evangelicals and old school, being Christian.
Jesus has turned South Park, if you ask me.
So you're gonna have a Jesus off.
They do, because each side has engineered Jesus robots that and old Jesus robots will give succor, they'll give you a hug. New Jesus robots will punch a fella.
Well, speaking of punching a fellow, and I don't know the last time that apparently he's big in sports, maybe he just likes the attention and everything like that. But one of the things that happened over the weekend was that because he's got friends in this particular sport, President Trump apparently appeared at a UFC match. So what was that all about, and what is our thoughts around that? Because apparently he was big into that notion. I think he'd done some golfing at Mar-a-Lago as well, but he was definitely at a UFC match and everything like that. So is he
He
really
has
a fan of wrestling, or does he just like the
he has a
attention
following.
that he gets?
They're pushing Trump into areas. So if you take a look at actually our political landscape and actually our landscape that's going around right now, in all honesty, there is a lot of anger that's going on in our nation. They've done actual polls where they said we are at the most angered point or something like that. I forget how they worded it, but yeah, our anger level is higher than it's ever been. But there's a lot of anger because of what's going on, how he's doing things, people being fired. That's why different individuals cannot go. That's why the GOP can't do town halls, because people are so mad. They're not going to answer to their individuals. And the same thing, there are people yelling at Democrat town halls, but the Democrats are actually, people are mad at the Democrats for a different reason than they're mad at the Republican Party. What they're doing with Trump hates anybody who pushes back against him. Anybody. He's a legitimate paper tiger. He's a bully. And when you push back against him, this is why China is making him look stupid, completely stupid on the global stage. And every country is actually buying into it. And this is why other countries are now leaning towards doing more deals with China. And now we're being left out of the whole thing. So what they do with Trump is they surround him with adoring fans. So in the UFC arena, it's the whole manly man, tough guy arena. And he's always had a backing in that area. If he goes to, when he went to a football game, there were other individuals that booed and booed loudly.
Okay.
They don't want that. They want the showcase, because what they want is they're going to take the same. That's going to be in a political ad. They're going to put out there, oh, people adore Trump. Look at all these people at UFC that adore Trump. And they're going to play that over and over, because it's the old principle of propaganda. That is all they're doing. And, people fall for it. And that's why he went to UFC. He's not going to the Masters where people are going to boo him. And that was a bigger event than the UFC. He's not going to the end of the NBA. He's trying to get those people deported. So, and I'm talking about all the people that are not white, he's trying to deport. Ask the kid at Duke, the Sudanese kid at Duke right now is in flux because he doesn't know if he's going to be here or not. From the podium, they said if you're here over 30 days, you're going to be arrested and deported. So now, it's just, this administration is horrible. So they've got to use propaganda.
It's uncertain and it's scary, and it's actually, you know what it's like? It's, you use the word manly man kind of thing. It's kind of like that manly man who has all the plumbing tools and no knowledge to do the plumbing. And he goes in and creates a bigger leak because I'm going to go in and do this. And I have no idea what I'm doing, but I got the tools. I have the tariffs. I have this, and I'm just going to use it. And he's going to create a bigger leak because it's probably better to put somebody in place who knows how to use those tools. Tariffs are not a good way to onshore manufacturing. Okay.
Well, let's ask Sasha. Let's set it up.
It's just stupid. Let's set it up for Sasha.
But hold on. Last night, arguing with Lance said thousands of factories are already reopening because of the tariffs. I said, that's crazy. The tariffs have only been in place, and they aren't even really in place now for 10 days. And then I Googled a bunch of news articles, no mention of factories. And he goes, that's because they're all liberal mainstream sources. Anyway, Sasha, we're going to get factories.
Well, I think the idea of reopening the factories or doing some manufacturing in the United States is a really, I should say, flawed idea, because the wages in U.S. Much higher than the rest of the world, especially in the countries like whether it's Pakistan or take Vietnam, or just take, I wouldn't even touch China for that matter, but even some other, Burma. Also, the U.S. people, they already get used to comfortable life, being in merger and acquisitions business or doing some real estate investments, trusts, and so on. And for them to go to a factory to all the dirt, even if they are being paid $80 an hour or more, they despise these jobs. Nobody wants to do this job. Do you see any parents who will say, "Oh, my son is working in a factory"? Please leave me alone. Nobody really wants that. So you want to impose on America something that they don't want to do it. So this is the idea is that there are towns that they rely on some coal mining or something like that, and if you don't have coal mining anymore, then the town is dead practically. Okay, so everybody is on unemployment insurance or some subsidies or whatever. So the town is dead. Okay. Now there was a question about education. Okay, education. Educate, educate. I don't think that Americans care about education either. They don't need education. They want to get a lot of money for doing nothing. Education, it's work for your brain, and this is the toughest one. And people don't want to use their brains to be educated. They want instant gratification, whether it's video games or going to casino or doing something, going to the beach, do barbecue. They want instant gratification every moment. They don't want to work hard at whether it's education or a factory job or anything. That's why also the idea of Trump to bring manufacturing back to United States, this is a horrible idea which will fail, whether it will never be tried, which is the best scenario. If it's not going to be tried, okay, just forget about it. Let's move to next chapter. Now, if it will be tried, then it will fail miserably, minus the funds or the money that will be spent on this so-called industrialization, and it will be even bigger flop. So you don't want to do that. Leave manufacturing where people are willing to work for minimum wages to manufacture, whether it's Vietnam or whether it's some other countries, Cambodia, whatever it might be. Leave it to them. US is not a manufacturing country like it was 150 years ago. It's not today. It is not. It's not fit today to be a manufacturing country because of workforce, because of the competition, because of several other countries, several other factors. So this is it's a flawed idea. Now, what Trump may succeed if he's very lucky. He may create a so-called Mar-a-Lago Accord. That means that all countries, including China and Japan, without them, it doesn't make any sense. They all will come to Mar-a-Lago, and they will all agree to exchange their treasury bills that they hold now, and China and Japan, number 1 and 2, into 100 years bond, which is not payable, no principal, no interest for next 100 years. And if that would be agreeable, then United States is essentially, practically speaking, is free of debt. Okay, there is a debt that will have to be repayable in 100 years, but it's not going to be you or me or Mr. Trump or anybody else. Okay, so in this case, so United States start with the zero bonds, no debts practically. On paper, yes, but practically no debt, and so it can run its affairs. I don't know what's going to happen as a result of it, and I don't know whether such agreement will be ever achieved. So far, Japanese and Chinese, they are liquidating U.S. bonds every second week. Now, the problem now is it's fact that 7 trillion worth of US debt has to be refinanced this year. So we are in April, so it's 8.5 more months, $7 trillion. Who is going to refinance it? Who is going to take it? This is why interest rates are relatively high. They cannot make them lower because nobody will touch US debt. So who's going to acquire all the 7 trillion? What, Federal Reserve? So Federal Reserve will have in its book extra $7 trillion. How good is that for American people, which Federal Reserve sitting on $7 trillion? So therefore, dollar is going down every single day. It's today renew 3 years bottom line for US dollar. So it's going lower and lower. Of course, you don't have to be a genius to understand that gold and silver, they're going up. And this is a process. I don't know who needs that or who is winning of that, but that's what really happening. So the US dollar is under pressure because of at least $7 trillion have to be refinanced this year. Go and figure out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Sasha, and everything. By the way, Terry McCann, one of our regular listeners, was asking, what about the education? What is going to happen to education?
I think Sasha kind of addressed that. He saw it and addressed it, but other people might want to address it as well.
So just a couple of things. Manufacturing coming back, that's going to be mostly automated, and that's going to take years to come back. So tariffs aren't going to do anything except for cause chaos, which is drop the bond price. And that's why we're not trusted anymore in terms of safe space. But in terms of education, you can see what this administration is trying to do with education. And the dumb thing is, if you're wanting to bring manufacturing back, and then you take away cell phones and all this other stuff where you could potentially have some coding and some higher paying wages there. No, you're talking about bringing sweatshop jobs here to the US. That's what you're thinking of. That requires no education. Hence the reason they're killing the education department, and they're trying to take away education on a national level. They're not trying to look at the higher standards. They're not trying to look at, they're looking at conspiracies at DHS now rather than actually looking at the science. We're not celebrating today. There was an all-women crew that went up in the Blue Origin for Amazon. We're not celebrating that. That's science. That's actually the study of it and going up to the edge of space and coming back down, how they did that. We're not looking at that. We're looking at the idiocy that this administration is going to kill off education. They're not going to spend money on it.
Let's talk more specifics. The U.S.'s technological superiority is due largely to an educational push in math and science that began in the late 1950s and ran through the 80s. We spent a ton of money. It was a national push. And the Republicans want to pull funding for universities for research. So education will get hit nationwide at the college level and the post-grad research level. And then it'll go to the states for high school, junior high, middle school. And some states are just freaking terrible. Oklahoma, a few years ago, with a Republican governor, had no money and underfunded education to the point that they couldn't even keep schools open 5 days a week. They had to go to 4 days a week. And the educational standards, when left up to the states, will have all sorts of hocus pocus and no emphasis in some places on STEM subjects.
Well, check this out. This to add on to how bad the education system is going to get in the U.S. The head, she should have never been put up there because she has no idea what she's doing at education. But Linda McMahon was put up in charge of the Department of Education. Bad pick from the start. Then she goes on an interview, doesn't know what the programs that she's talking about. Then on top of that, she tries to say, well, hey, and if I remember, she said, oh, well, in Louisiana, they did some really cool things. They're rated 48th in the country. They did some really cool things, and they're still at the bottom of the country, and you're trying to use them as an example. That's what I mean. And Rick, you're right. Leaving it up to the states, they're not going to do anything. They're more focused on throwing religion.
We're going to put A1 back in the schools.
Yeah, A1.
And people are panels looking like A1, like
last time I checked, A1. Last time I checked, A1 was the steak sauce.
That nobody considered, what it could be. But when
real quick, it's going to be even worse for kids with special needs. And that's the thing where we always, when we talk about education, we always talk about those individuals that are able-bodied and don't have special needs. We forget that a whole swath of people do. And those individuals are about to lose the IDEA program, everything around their IEPs and everything else. They're going to lose services. The special needs individuals in our country who have autism to being, having other deleted chromosome or chromosome deletions to everything, they're going to be left in the wind. And that is the tragic part.
And I agree with you. Just like they've started cutting Medicaid, a lot of the Social Security checks that they're starting to cut now. A lot of people haven't been getting their Social Security checks, but yet I listen to 106 radio because sometimes I listen to the extreme right to see what they're telling the people. Right. And they're like, oh my God, the SSA is so much better. We've reduced the spending. Children aren't getting the Social Security checks anymore. And I'm like, are we still on that stupid aspect that children aren't supposed to get it? Didn't people know that when a parent or both parents die, that the children do get Social Security checks? They so that the parent can still kind of take care of the children. So I'm a little bit confused about what they think is important in Social Security and what isn't. They're pushing to raise the age. I don't know, what's going to happen there for some people, but they are cutting Social Security and Medicaid. There was rumor Medicare would be cut, but Medicare, actually a lot of the people supplement it. So, that would be kind of stupid because people are investing their money, their dollars, their saved up money to retire with into the Medicare program with the supplement. So,
I asked Google AI, who are the most pro-science recent presidents? And it gave me back Obama, Jimmy Carter, and Bill Clinton. But I would add one more, Ronald Reagan. We took down the Soviet Union with science. Reagan supported, Reagan supported the Star Wars initiative, which was supposedly to send smart bricks into space to knock down missiles. The science didn't work, but the Soviet Union didn't know that, and they spent themselves into bankruptcy and collapse trying to respond to that.
So we've got two other folks that have joined us, both Nick and Shaquille are here. I did want to ask, because you wanted positive news, and I stumbled across this story yesterday, a couple of days ago, and Jacoby may know about it, and I think I mentioned it to you because I know I sent it on a Facebook post and everything, but there is a group of Yale students, African-American Yale students, that have created a social network that is going to be a competitor to LinkedIn and to Facebook and everything like that. So they've raised 3.1 million, and I don't know enough about funding to know what that is in terms of good or bad in pre-seed funding to turn its founder's vision into a reality and everything like that. So they are definitely got that running and everything, and they even posted it on LinkedIn, and then it went viral, and they attracted interest from something that I know that Shaquille knows about, which is venture capital funds and business angels and everything like that. But it looks like it's a good one. I actually went on the website. It's very developmental right at the moment and everything, but they look like they are going after that whole Facebook model and everything like that, but they don't want to be having some of the same mistakes that some of our current social media has and everything like that. So they even said that the narrative is that online metrics is for most of the social media and everything else, but they want to do something different than the online metrics. So what is our thoughts around this notion of a competitor to Facebook coming out of Yale?
It's not. In other words, it's a waste of time. Waste of time even to discuss it, really, because the thing is, the odds are long, probably less than 5%. They'll even survive in the next 5 years, and that's the reality of the business. But
even if it's based on AI, because apparently it's an AI-based network.
Everybody has their dream, but the thing is, turning dreams into reality are just two different things. And so the thing is, I've seen a lot of these social media networks. They come, they go. And the same thing actually happened in my business. They get a lot of hype. Oh, we're going to sell a lot of life insurance to a third-party administrator, and then they're dead. And I even told my people, I said, the difference between me and them is I'll be around while you're burying them. And that's true, so I really don't care what they think they're going to do. As they say in Pawn Stars, it ain't happening. But
so something will replace Facebook, but you can't predict what it is until it's here and it's big among.
Not anytime soon. When you're first in the market, what Facebook was, the sloppy seconds are what they are. If your dream is to replace Facebook, my thing is you
wasn't first.
You need to be the first wherever you are, not the second Facebook.
So no,
be the first wherever you are.
Facebook came in second.
In the tech industry, Facebook wasn't even second. Facebook wasn't even third. Facebook came out. It's honestly both Rick, you and Nick are correct. We're never going to see we're not going to know what is going to go viral and be the next Facebook or MySpace or AOL, Instant Messenger, and all the other forums that were out there. So it's just going to be one of those things that's going to catch fire and go. But there are established things like that are going to sit around. Nick, you're right. They're going to sit around for a while until something. Look at YouTube, for example.
Look at NVIDIA. They sat around for like 20 years before NVIDIA took off. People don't realize the overnight success takes a lot.
Honestly, Twitter has an established base. And it's going to take a while before Twitter is taken over in that base. Even Blue Sky, which is a competitor to it, it's going to be hard to overcome that Twitter hump because everybody knows about it. And we become lazy. This is what we do. This is what we're going to go to. So therefore, that's what I'm going to use all the time. So, I mean, it's just going to take a while. And we're never going to know what it is.
We can discuss it on the media show. I mean, the thing is, with a lot of this media, I welcome I just wish them the best of luck. But when you're talking about a startup, you're talking about your odds are 95% against just to start it up.
But I'm reaching out to them.
If Sasha will invest in it, then I'll invest in it. But my money's pretty safe right now because Sasha probably wouldn't invest a dime.
No, but Nick, I have reached out to these individuals, and I'll continue reaching out to them and everything to see if we can get them on and everything like that. But they do have some major CEOs, like the CEO, Steve Hubman of Reddit, that's one of their angel investors, and Edward Teen, who's a founder.
What was the name of that one that had the CEO Katzenberg and all that other stuff? I forgot the name. We started IBM TV. They started at the same time. They raised $1 billion, and 6 months later, they were broke. And they folded. I forgot even the name. Remember,
Quibi.
Quibi. It was Quibi. Okay.
Quibi. So it was two high-level executives.
Quibi started the same year, same month we did. Quibi had Katzenberg. It had Meg Whitman from eBay. It had all these. It's gone.
Millions and millions of dollars, and they bankrupt in what, 60 days, something stupid like that.
Again, it's the tech world, and then
It's also management.
You don't know what's going to fire.
This is a tangible that's really hard to tell from companies running the blind company.
Check this one out. Discord had competitors when it came out. Discord caught fire in the gaming world like no other, and Discord took off. But people forgot there were other things out there. IRQ was where it really started, and that was years back. IRQ was the big thing that gamers and everybody else were using. Then they jumped from IRQ to something else and something else and something else. But then they found love in Discord, and then Discord got the
Discord has taken off. It is becoming the TikTok replacement. People in TikTok will go to my Discord. I'm doing this. This is what we're talking about, but go to the Discord. So Discord has become the new rise of voices that need to be heard or want to be heard. Very informed voices as well. It's not all the banter you hear and the crazy stuff. A lot of it is the very well-informed, well-organized. It's very organized.
Before we get off,
it's just another chat platform.
It is.
People are able to utilize.
But and people are organized.
That came out. That was what was it? That used the microphone, the stage. What was it? Where you had the one speaker and everybody else in the group speaks. You still use it now.
Skype. What are you?
Twitter?
No, it came out. It was one of those other
like Twitch.
It was one of those other platforms that came out. It started on the iPhone. People started using it because
Clubhouse.
Yeah, Clubhouse. That became big for a second. It's not really that big that much anymore.
Yeah, it's dropped off, and I'm barely in Clubhouse now myself and everything. So yeah, it's kind of dropped off and everything. We got Shaquille here. I don't know what news is coming out of Australia. I did see one news that I mentioned about the Australian president and other stuff that's going on, as well as some of the other places that he's involved in. So glad to see you back. How are things going in your neck of the woods, Shaquille, and what's happening?
Our Prime Minister's called an election, so we've got an election coming up in the next few weeks between the Labor Party and the Liberal National Coalition. So roughly that would equate to the Labor Party being like the Democrats for Australia, and the Liberal Nationals sort of being like the Republicans. I think that this is a pretty unpopular Prime Minister. He was an unpopular Prime Minister when he was elected. He remains unpopular today. The numbers would show that he'll probably end up winning a minority government. So minority governments where you don't actually win enough seats to form government yourself, but you actually basically form government in conjunction with a whole heap of smaller parties and independent parties. And that the numbers tend to indicate that's probably what's going to happen. So,
were you guys on Down Under shaken by our new tariffs that came out everywhere? Did the people of Australia go nuts? They actually got a lot of press here in Europe, but I'm not sure about Australia. They were going nuts.
Well, personally, I think there's an overreaction to the tariffs. Look, obviously, no country wants to be tariffed. But hey, look, we've got a national sales tax. In the absence of Trump being able to institute a national sales tax, tariffs are not necessarily a bad idea. If there is a commensurate tax decrease for the consumer in the United States, then this could be a viable alternative way of receiving funds. What is very interesting, of course, is that he's had very, very high tariffs against China. And Australia is one of China's trading partners, shall we say. And so the increased demand from China has, of course, resulted in increased demand on Australian goods and services. So that could end up being quite positive for the Australian economy. As usual, nobody pays too much attention to the very small economy of Australia, and we sort of float through like we did during the Great Recession. So I think that an escalating trade war with China could actually end up, between China and the United States, could end up being quite positive for Australia and by extension New Zealand.
Yeah, but I checked the GDP of the people in Australia. You guys are doing pretty good financially, though. In other words, the people that are working in Australia, I think they actually have better incomes than people in the United States. At least
It's about the same. It's about the same. Our average wage
now. A tiny little country in a desert island somewhere zero way. How can you even become close to the great United States of America?
Well, the United States is not that high up, but the GDP per person, the average wage in Australia is roughly around about 100,000 a year these days. What the US at the moment is about 65,000. About 65,000 is equivalent to about 100,000 Aussie. So I think our cost of living is a lot higher than most of the United States, with the exception of perhaps places like New York and California and Vermont and places like that. But look, I think we're in a good position. It'll be interesting to see whether some of the so-called cuts that they're making in the United States are going to be followed by the countries around the world. So questions like what you guys are talking about before with education. Many years ago here, we ended up nationalising essentially the education system, which I was opposed to because I thought that it was better for, individual areas to be able to focus more on education in their areas. And there was there has been a lot of debate about that here. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out in the United States. And there's a whole heap of other cuts to government's spending in the United States. And I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and what effect that'll have on other countries. The UK is going to be the one that'll be very interesting to see when they call their election.
Yeah, Shaquille, just really quick, and I know I probably asked you this before, but I don't remember the answer because there's been a lot of conversation around manufacturing coming back into the United States, whether it is or isn't and everything. Because I could even look it up, but since I've got a person from Australia, I'll ask you directly, what are the leading industries in Australia? It's still on my wish list of a place to go visit, but it is way on the other side of the world and everything. But where are the leading industries in your home country? And I know it probably varies by province to province, but what are some of the leading industries?
Well, I think the biggest thing about Australia is that we're a mineral wealthy country. So I think our mining is obviously the biggest industry. And look, the effect of that has been that we've lost manufacturing jobs here. I think that's disappointing. There's a meme going around at the moment, of all these Americans working in just sewing stuff in I hate to use the term sweatshops, but I think that the idea that all of those jobs are going to come back to America or come back to Australia or Canada or whatever, I think that doesn't make sense. It's probably an overstatement of what is intended. But certainly you do want to see things like vehicle manufacturing and aeronautic manufacturing. You want to see things like pharmaceuticals and all of those sorts of things coming back. I think that there's a massive disruption that's occurred because of globalization, because of things like, my favorite economist, Milton Friedman, who said, hey, let these poorer places build all this stuff for us and we do the value add. Now, JD Vance did a very big speech about this recently. And it does appear that a lot of our Western nations have stagnated. But if we do pull all of these jobs from overseas, that's going to cause a vacuum in the world. So I'm not sure how that'll play out. I would say that you need to bring some jobs back, but not all.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before we wrap, and this is for both you
and... Sorry, I'm going to say one last thing. Especially considering that you can't even, if we're talking about the United States, and Australia for that matter, you can't even find people to pick fruit. You can't find people to work agriculture jobs. There's a chronic shortage of that and has been for decades. So, you're really going to find, a million seamstresses to come and, create new shirts and dresses. I think that's a bit silly. And I think the meme that was apparently put out by China is probably reasonably accurate, actually. It should be a wake-up call for some people.
Before we get ready to wrap up, and only got about a minute and a half to go and everything, and this is for both you and Sasha, because I brought up those young fellows from Yale. What do you look at when you are doing investments as either an angel investor or some other type of investment, venture capital or whatever? So what are some of the trademarks that you look if you're going to do investments? Because I know both of you do investments in companies.
it's very difficult to do any long-term investments right now. The only long-term, what I would recommend, it's definitely gold and silver. The reason is that this year, U.S. has to refinance $7 trillion worth of its debt. And while Japanese and Chinese are selling it every 2 weeks, tens of billions of dollars US debt, U.S. has to keep relatively high interest rates to attract buyers, and that will reflect on the dollar, which makes every day a new low. So if dollar makes a new low, then it's no-brainer that silver and gold will make new highs. And if that's the case, that's where you have to be. And this way, you don't worry about earnings and about revenues of different companies and Trump actions and anything. That's all what you have to do. That's a safe haven right now, in my opinion.
Shaquille, what about you? What kind of things, and if you can give me like in a minute or two, that you look at in investments, and then we'll all go to the economic show. But when you're looking at individual investments,
I trade a lot differently because I'm a macro absolute return trader. So basically, I just look at the volatility that's priced into the markets and try and make a determination as to whether the markets are likely to be more volatile or less volatile than what's being priced in. Adding to what Sasha had already said, you will look at commodity prices and see if there's a correlation or a miscorrelation between them. As for individual companies, look, in any economic circumstance, there are some companies that are obviously going to be winners and some that are obviously not. And what I try to do is to take positions in those, whilst at the same time making sure that I've hedged off my risks, so I can take a limited risk position with potentially high upside. And so that's the sort of stuff that I look for.
That makes sense.
And look, American goods at the moment, there's going to be a big question. The world has to do something, and American goods is going to be a very interesting thing because, ignore Canada for just a moment because of its geographic proximity to the United States. Does Europe sit there and say, well, you know what, we're going to buy our stuff from another country rather than buying our stuff from America because America's being too heavy-handed with us? Is there the potential that other parts of the world will actually just decrease the amount they're buying from America? That was always the risk with the trade war, and time will tell.
Yeah, definitely. And on that note, we're going to get on out of here. Hopefully, folks will join me on the Economics Monday. I did put it in the chat if you didn't get the email from Nick and everything along those lines. But we're going to get on out of here, and we'll be catching them on Economics Monday and hopefully Media Monday as well. But right now, it's time to get on out of here.